Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Christopher Dana Reeve Foundation's webinar featuring our virtual support group program. My name is Bill Cawley. I'm the director for the Peer and Family Support Program. The Peer and Family Support Program is our national peer mentoring program where we provide emotional support, information, and resources to people that are living with paralysis, their family member and caregivers, as well as professional caregivers. The mentoring program is available to anyone who might be interested. And if there'll be some contact information at the end of the presentation, so you're welcome to reach out to me if you're interested in talking to a mentor, or if you are at a facility and want to talk about the opportunities maybe around peer mentoring for that. So I just wanted to share that with you. But we are very excited to have you all here, and thank you for making time in your busy lives and days to be a part of this webinar. We're excited to talk to you about our virtual support group program. Thank you. We started the program back in the fall and winter of 2020. Started to develop the program, and then through the early part of 2021. A lot of this was sort of an outgrowth, obviously, of what was going on with the pandemic and the social isolation that so many of our community members were feeling during the pandemic. And we started to roll the program out and started our first support groups actually in April. And so we're excited to have you here today and talk to you a little bit more about it. There we go. Just having a hard time moving our slides. So I'm going to share with you just a little bit about our agenda. So obviously welcoming you all here today. And again, we're very excited to have you. We're going to talk a little bit about the program, how it works, and some of the benefits of virtual support groups and the program itself. We're lucky to have Ted Thomas here with us from the Hey Peers platform. This is the platform that we host our virtual support groups on. And we're also very excited to have two guest presenters with us that are part of the program, and I'll talk about them in a moment, or I'll introduce them in a minute. And then obviously we want to allow for question and answers. So we're hoping to do that at the end. So we certainly have allowed time for that. So if you have any questions, we'll certainly be addressing those. As I said, my name is Bill Cawley, and I'm the director for the Peer and Family Support Program. Ted Thomas, who is here again, as I mentioned, from the Hey Peers platform. He's going to talk to you a little bit about how to register for the different support groups and how that process works. In particular, if you come through the Reeve Foundation web pages onto the platform to register for support groups. So we're glad to have Ted here. And as I mentioned, we're excited to have Helene and Dan. Helene is the mother of someone who is spinal cord injured, and she's been very active in our family caregiver support group. And so we thought it would be great if she could sort of share her experience with that. And then Dan Swisher, who's living with paralysis. And one of our peer mentors, actually, a great guy, and he helps lead one of the support groups. So we're looking forward to having them just share a little bit about, again, their own stories and their experiences with the support groups. So with that, I think we're going to really sort of get into the meat of the webinar here and talk a little bit about some of the benefits of virtual support groups. It's the ability to meet people and share the same experiences, that understand what you're going through. I think this is such a critical part of support groups, because while we have loved ones who care for us and help us and certainly understand us and our situations better than most people do, they don't have that lived experience. And even the doctors and therapists and social workers who we work with, again, are caring and understanding and understand our situations, but don't understand it the same way as someone who's have the lived experience, whether you're living with paralysis or you're a caregiver of taking care of someone who's living with paralysis. So the ability to connect with people like that, we think, is critical. I touched on the feeling of isolation that certainly has occurred during the pandemic, but it's not unique to the pandemic. I think the pandemic just sort of put it on steroids. We can feel socially isolated from sometimes even from our family, in our own communities, and that can be logistically, because it's just hard to get out and be connected with people, but also just socially, because people maybe not totally understand our situations. The access to emotional support is incredibly important. Again, having an opportunity to talk to someone who has, as we often say in the peer mentoring program, been there, done that, can really give you a chance to share, know that you're being understood, and feel that connection to people that certainly prior to the pandemic might have been something you might have been experiencing or having difficulty with, but certainly during the pandemic as well. And now as we, hopefully it's, we're starting to transition away from it, but we're certainly not there yet. That idea of isolation and that support we all need will continue. So we certainly hope that we know that emotional support can be critical for you, and it certainly can come through and be supportive during the support groups themselves. Having a safe space to express your feelings. Whenever I think about this, I often think about the caregivers in our lives, for the moms, the spouses, the dads who might, without being judged, have an opportunity to kind of say, this is really hard. This isn't easy. And while you may say that to your best friend, they don't fully understand, I think. But if you can say that to someone else, again, who has that lived experience, talk to that other mother or father, or talk to that other spouse and say that, they understand because they've been there. So that's, again, another critical part. And it's not just for the family caregivers, obviously, but also people living with paralysis, to be able to share that with someone who's lived it. As we like to say, again, in the peer mentoring program, have been there and done that. Experience that personal growth is also critical. And these support groups are a great way to, as I like to say, sort of maybe get unstuck. I've been at this I got hurt back in 1992. So I stopped counting a while ago, the number of years. But even with all that experience, if you will, you still get stuck at times. And sometimes you don't know how to get unstuck. But when you have an opportunity to talk to other people, whether it's an individual in the group who you connect with, or the collective ideas and support from the group can help you get unstuck. If you were dealing with something, maybe you were doing your ballot program the same way for 10 years and now it's not working, and you're feeling like it's really affecting other parts of your life, you get some ideas from other people, and you can kind of get, like I say, unstuck. But that really that helps you grow and sort of hopefully move on into the next part of your life, or continue to deal with the issue you might be dealing with. You get the opportunity to increase your knowledge of living with paralysis and caregiving. I think of this a lot as tips and tricks. I've been, as I said, I've been dealing with this for 25 plus years. And I still am amazed when people come up to me and they see these two forks that I have on my wheelchair, where I put my briefcases on, or my grocery bags, or my kids. I used to ride my kids around while they stand on these forks in front of my wheelchair. And people are still like, where'd you get those? What is that? How do you use that? It was one of the first things I put on my wheelchair, when I was still in the hospital. So I learned from people that have been doing this longer than I have. And I learned from people who are younger and dealing with it. Maybe they only been dealing with it for a couple of years, but they show me some app or tell me about some app that I had no idea about. So a lot of tips and tricks get shared amongst these folks who are in the support groups, and they can go a long way in helping you. Learning about available resources. Now, during these virtual support groups, you very well may be in a group with people from all over the country. Or you could be dealing with people in your same state. And we actually have some support groups that have people from the same rehab center joining the group. So I say that with the idea that you may be talking to other folks who are in a different state or a different part of the state, but they can help show you or talk to you about how they got or figured out the resources that you're talking about or interested in finding out about, how they found theirs in their own city or their own state. And that might help you kind of get the breadcrumbs you need to kind of get to the resources you're looking for. The support groups can help others work through challenges. So the collective experience of the group can really help someone figure out a situation or hopefully change their perspective on how maybe they're looking at something. But there's another piece to the support groups which I think are really important, and it helps you feel like you're contributing, maybe that you're making a difference in someone else's life. And if you're struggling a little bit or you're having a hard time, but it's not an issue you're bringing to the support group, but there you are talking to someone else about maybe that similar situation or a different situation. Now you're helping someone else. And I really think that can help you feel better about yourself and what you're contributing. And it might help change some of the things that you might be dealing with, even if it's not the same specific issue you might be dealing with or talking about or thinking about. So these support groups are not just for someone to get help, support, ideas, thoughts, perspective, but also allows you to start to see how you're contributing and giving back to your community. And I think that's another benefit of support groups that don't always get talked about. The ease and convenience of attending from home. While the pandemic has been hard and not a lot of fun, but it is, we've certainly learned that you can do a lot of things from home. And the ability to not have to deal with transportation, especially in our community, where that can be a challenge, that can go a long way and be very helpful and hopefully increase your willingness and ability to participate. I also think in these instances, I think about the caregiver who maybe can't get away for a couple hours to attend a support group in person. Now they have the ability to go out on the porch, go into the living room and get a little time for themselves and be part of the support group that way as well, without having to leave their loved one, which can be difficult and stressful at times. And we'll talk about this in a little more detail in a couple minutes, but these the benefits that they're held on this platform, this online support group platform that we'll be talking about in a few minutes. So we want to talk a little bit about the format for the support group, so you have a little sense on how they work. When we started the program, we decided we thought it was important to have 3 different sets of support groups. One support group is for individuals who are living with quadriplegics like myself. Someone else who is another group for folks who are living with paraplegia. And then I've kind of referenced this a couple of times too, as well, the family member caregivers. I think for all the folks who are in our community and familiar with our community, realize that someone who's living with quadriplegia, their life might be a little different. Some of their challenges, some of their issues, some of the things they want to talk about or better understand can be different than someone who's living with paraplegia and vice versa. So we thought it was important to allow those 2 different groups be able to talk to folks who have that same, very similar lived experience while we're all living with paralysis or caring for someone living with paralysis. That puts us as one big family, but still within that family, there are situations where you want to talk to someone who maybe a little bit more better understands a little bit more specifically your given situation. Again, whether you're quadriplegic, whether you're a paraplegic, whatever it might be. And then the family member caregivers to give them the opportunity to talk amongst themselves and share their experiences and support each other as well. Each one of these groups meets twice a month, and the meetings are an hour long. So the support group for people living with quadriplegia, that'll meet twice a month, as well as the individuals living with paraplegia and the family member caregivers. The format of the program is a little bit unique, I think, than some other support groups where we actually have co-facilitation. We do have in each support group, we do have a mental health professional. So it's a social worker who has experience leading support groups and leading support groups within our community. We think it's great to sort of have that background, that knowledge to potentially tap into during a support group. But we also have a peer, someone who has that lived experience, as I keep referencing, to help lead that support group as well. While both of them bring great perspective and experience to the support group, they also come at it potentially from a little bit of a different angle. And so we think that's a great way to make sure the support groups are meeting all the needs of all the folks, of all the participants. The meeting format, we leave it a little bit open to our support group leaders to decide whether they want to have a support group that is more open in nature. In other words, it kind of the support group starts and it's really, what do you want to talk about? Who wants to talk about, who wants to raise something they want to talk about? They bring the topics, if you will, to the support group. We have talked about, and some of the support group leaders also will do this too, based on maybe that something occurred in another previous meeting, or they want to bring a specific topic to the support group, they can do that as well. And they'll have resources and materials and information actually that the Reeve Foundation can provide to them to talk about a specific topic, allow everybody to kind of have some discussion time around that. If that takes the full hour, that's fine. Or if it's 20 minutes or 25 minutes of that meeting, that's great. And then it can kind of go to an open forum. So we work with the support group leaders in terms of what the format might look like, and we look for their feedback and how they would like to conduct the support groups. But so it can depend a little bit on the support group and the support group leaders. We're going to talk in a couple minutes just about some of the topics that I covered, and then privacy. This is obviously we want to maintain privacy in the meetings. What is said there needs to stay in that group, and it's not shared. And we ask our support group leaders to speak to that at the beginning of each meeting. Again, people are in different states sometimes, and maybe could across the country, but still, whatever's talked about in that support group, everybody needs to understand that that's being kept confidential, especially in instances where, again, we do have people who join from the same rehab center sometimes, or the same organization that they're involved with. And we also want to let everybody know that there's no cost to register or to attend the meetings. So this is free of charge. It's provided by the Reeve Foundation. So we want to make sure everybody's aware of that. So I just mentioned a couple of seconds ago about sort of the format of the meetings and some of the topics. And I just wanted to share some of the things that are talked about. These are not the only things that are talked about, but in the family caregiver support groups, there's a lot of time talked about making time for self-care, making sure you're taking care of yourself as well. So many caregivers are so focused on taking care of the individual, the spouse, the child, the nephew, whatever it might be, that they don't take care of themselves. And to take care of others, you need to make sure you're taking care of yourself as well. There's often a lot of discussion about finding that balance and preserving relationships. These two next bullets are, certainly kind of tied together. But we hear about this in the mentoring program, but we also hear about it through the support groups where, the spouse may say, I'm no longer a spouse, I'm just a caregiver. The parent says, I'm no longer a parent, I'm just a caregiver. So maintaining those relationships as they were and trying to still make sure they're intact after, let's say, an accident is important. And again, that's a little bit of the self-care. And then we talk about the relationships and the dynamics, defining those boundaries so those relationships can be kept intact. There's obviously crossover, and there's no one size fits all. But that's, I think, where in talking to the support groups and the other individuals, you can start to hear and see how other people maybe handle a situation. And that might help you in terms of how you deal with the dynamics of the relationship with your spouse or your son or daughter, let's say. For people living with paralysis, the discussions, again, are pretty far ranging. There's obviously a lot of discussion around health and, example, UTIs and how to avoid them, how to treat them, what to do about them. We talked a little bit about, I talked about tips and tricks, but tips and tools that make wheelchair life easier. All the little different things that you can learn from someone else, whether it's a new gadget, an attachment, accessory to the wheelchair, something that if you're driving, a different kind of spinner knob, whatever it might be. The collective knowledge of a support group can be, you can really harness that. And if you're stuck on something, trying to figure out how to handle a situation, usually someone in that group is going to have come across it at some point. Oftentimes there talk about travels and tips and ideas on how to best travel, how to prepare for the travel, how to deal with situations that come up, have backup plans, all that kind of fun stuff. There was always a lot of interesting stories going around about travel and all the different support groups. Safety considerations, emergency preparedness. And some of this is actually one that I saw crossover between both the caregiving support groups and the people living with paralysis support groups as well. So there's a lot of that, especially with the kind of weather we've been having and during the winter, and now going to the spring with some of the storms that have been happening. So that's always a big topic. Pain management is certainly a challenge for a lot of folks in the community. Trying to find local chapters of different adaptive, let's say, recreational connections. We talked a little bit about sort of finding those resources. And again, even if you're in a support group with people from another state, they can talk to you or share with you how they found those resources in their state, or they might know someone who they played against in wheelchair rugby, in your state. So, for example, and then brainstorming how to research and advocate for treatment options and other things as well. So I think hopefully you get a sense. Again, this is not an exhaustive list of the different things that have been discussed, but I think it gives you a sense on the different topics. But there's also, anybody who's been part of a support group knows, these conversations go in a lot of different directions. So at this point, I want to turn it over to Ted Thomas, who is going to talk to you a little bit about the Hey Peers platform, so you have a better understanding of how you can register and become part of the groups. Ted.
Hey, thank you very much, Bill. So yeah, Ted Thomas here, and we're going to throw out a question to you. So if we can bring the poll up real quick, we'll go ahead and toss that question out there. It's just simply, have you participated in a Reeve Foundation virtual support group on Hey Peers? So just click yes or no, and we'll take a look at the results there. While that's going on, I'm going to go ahead and share with you a screen so that you can see step by step how to get into Hey Peers. So you should be looking now at the ChristopherReeve.org website. And I really just want to show you how easy it is. If you think your mindset is, how do I get support? And in this case, you literally go to that menu bar across the top there that says get support. So I'm going to click on that. Screen should change over. And this is the get support area. Now, right in that big yellow space, right on top, I want you to look at the red underline area that says virtual support groups. Turn white, put my mouse over it. So again, super simple to click on that. Again, you're just a couple of clicks away, literally. All right. So the virtual support group, scroll down just a little bit. You have two options here. So join us on Hey Peers, or if you're already registered on Hey Peers. So there's two pathways right there. So first, the register now. I really want you to take a look at that, because if you've already been, and it shows that a few of you have, if you've already been on Hey Peers, you know this process. But in this case, you're going to click on register now. And let's see, I think we've got pretty much the poll done. So it's showing up there as 6% yes, 94% no. All right, there we go. All right, we can take that down. So this is the Hey Peers registration screen. And the first thing, of course, is we want to create an account. So I'm going to walk you through just as an example account, right? Example at example.com. That's a real unique email address, right? All right. Fill out your name. And my name is Example Thomas, and then your username. So in this case, your username can be anything that you want it to be made up to. I'm going to use my username as Example. Simply click yes. So that's your username, right? You've used your email address to start. And now we're going to create a password. And yeah, you can see the drop down there. I have lots and lots of passwords. Okay, so I've created my password. Be sure to click this little button down here. It says, I have read terms and conditions. I encourage you, if you're interested, go ahead and click on the terms and conditions and they'll open up. And that brings you into creating your account, right? So once you've done that, you'll be sent over to the Christopher Dana Reeve Foundation enter here. You see it populates some of this information already, okay? And everything that has a red asterisk does require an entry. And so whatever you're comfortable with providing, please do. You can see, like on gender, you have a lot of selections to make. The birth date, there's already something in there. So if you choose, I'm not saying to not put anything in there, but if you choose to put your birth date, that's fine. Be sure to check your time zone. And so let's see, I am US Eastern, right? And then emergency contact name. Hey, I'm going to put mom, and mom's number is just the opposite of my number. And then you have the ethnicity, the state information in here. Oh, where is it? There we go. Enter an address. And we'll just punch it in there as 123 South Main Street, whatever pops up. It automatically populated the zip code. You're going to be able to click that box, acknowledging that you're coming into the Christopher Dana Reeve Foundation virtual support groups, that they're facilitated by trained peer leaders. And then you've updated your location. At the very bottom, you'll see save. Next step. Congratulations, your account is good, and you are going to end up at the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation Hey Peers landing page. So there you can do a couple of different things. One, of course, scroll down, take a look at some things. You can see right there in the wording, the description, there's lots of live links. Okay. So you can click through those. You can scroll on down, And then in this region right here, the word list next to the calendar, meetings. This would be the meetings that are coming up in which you can register for. So when you go to attend a meeting that you've registered for, you can start from naturally the ChristopherReeve.org webpage in that Get Support area where you've already created your Hey Peers account, and that'll bring you right into their homepage that you're looking at right now. So that's the steps. I hope you found that that's pretty easy. And I'll tell you, your best experience in getting into this and being in a meeting is probably going to be if you're on a computer, PC or Mac. Your best experience is likely to be on Chrome, although Edge and Internet Explorer work, Mozilla, Firefox, of course. If you're on a tablet, use the web browser that comes with the tablet, be it Android or iPhone. In iPhone, it would be Safari. In Android tablets, I'm not sure what the browser is there, but that would work. Chrome doesn't work so well in iPhone or iPads, excuse me. And then, of course, iPhones, that works too. All right. So that's the steps. And I hope you enjoy the meetings, the support groups. We're glad to have this foundation as a part of Hey Peers. So with that, Bill, if you're ready, I'm going to turn it back to you. And by all means, if there was any questions that you came up with while I was talking there, pop them in the Q&A and perhaps we can get to those at the back end. Go ahead, Bill.
Thanks, Ted. It's been great working with you all as well. And I think, as you can see, it's a pretty intuitive process. If you take a couple minutes, you'll be registered, and then you can join as many of the support groups as you like. So I'm going to reshare my screen here. Okay, great. Thanks again, Ted. So as I mentioned in the welcome or the introductions, we're really happy to have a couple of our support group participants to, again, share a little bit about their own experience as well as their involvement with the support group. So first I want to introduce, once my presentation slides want to move, they don't want to move. Doesn't want to click over, but Helene Runyon is, again, one of our more active folks in our family caregiver support group. I've learned a lot from her just listening in. So want to just introduce her. And so Helene, take it away.
Okay. Thanks, Bill. Well, bear with me as I try to get through this. On September 17th, and it's almost a year now, my son went to help his girlfriend fix a flat tire. Within like a few minutes of leaving his home, he was struck off this motorcycle by an 18-year-old inexperienced, uninsured driver who was in a hurry to make a left-hand turn in front of him. On September 17th, my son became paralyzed from chest down. Well, there's nothing that could have prepared myself, my family, for the horrific journey that we would be going through to come. Well, sorry, it's almost a year later, and I absolutely still feel unprepared. I have no medical experience at all, nor does anyone in my family. In the hospital, my husband and I were given a white binder. It was actually the rehab time, and the binders was everything you wanted to know about spinal cord injury. And we were told to read the binder. that was tough. As I read each page, I cried, and I could only get through one page, maybe a day. So I so wanted to know everything that I could about my son's injury. But this was the most difficult thing, to try to learn it and realize that this is what his life was going to be like. I became aware from reading the book that my son's entire body was going to be affected by this spinal cord injury, that his inability to walk was going to be maybe the least of the difficulties that he was going to encounter. It was traumatizing, heartbreaking, and completely overwhelming. I just wanted to change places with him. For the next several months, I closed myself off from the world, even my family members. Sorry. I knew I should talk to someone. Well, everybody kept saying I should, but I couldn't. I was in my own world, and that was okay. I would just get by day in my own world. Fortunately, I had my husband to talk to. But as you know, men are from Mars. And he's not quite a talker. He keeps it in. So finally I decided, okay, I'm going to talk to my friends and my family. When I spoke to them, I felt like I was in another world. I felt like they couldn't understand what was really happening. So I decided not talking to anyone was better. In April, I saw an email from the Christopher Reeve Foundation organization about an online group for family and caregivers of people with spinal cord injury. I didn't know what to expect, but I logged on. One of the participants, the first one talking, began to say that she feels like she's in another world. She said she talks to her friends, she talks to her family about her husband's injury, but they don't want to even listen. They don't want to hear the details. They just kind of turn blank. And so she said she felt completely alone, as if she was in another world. And that's when it clicked and I felt connected. This may sound pretty strange, but after the first session was over, and for quite a few days, I felt a euphoria. I felt a high. I found myself smiling to myself for the first time in a very long time. I couldn't wait for the next group meeting. Just a little bit about the meetings, and Bill has already said much of this. They are very relaxed and very welcoming. People can choose to log on anonymously and just listen. I feel their heartbreak, these anonymous participants, what they're going through. I understand how hard it is to join anything in person, especially when you are suffering that much. We have new people sign in each week, as well as people that have been logging on, every time. We meet 2 times a month for an hour. Sometimes I feel it's not enough, but I know everybody is so busy. I've met some truly, truly amazing people who are not only caregivers, but who also work full-time, take care of young children or elderly parents. During our sessions, we do a lot of laughing, a lot of crying. Well, I should say some crying. We share stories. That's the best part. Oh, and a lot of stories about travel. The information and advice is wonderful. You feel you can ask any question. You can give comfort, compassion, and just listen. My situation is different. I'm not living with my son. I felt like I was cheating, coming on, because I'm not living with my son. I'm not the one caring physically. We did it for a while, but my son's girlfriend is now his fiance. She lives with him. She helps him out. She is his caretaker. They live across the country, and I do call every day. It's probably the worst thing that happened of my son's injury is that he has his mother calling him every day. So I guess you could say I am remotely caregiving. At first, I wasn't even sure if I really belonged to this caregiver group because I wasn't directly caregiving, but I have been very welcome, and I've been made to feel as if I too am a contributor. The group meeting facilitators we have are amazing. They are so knowledgeable and perceptive, but very, very down to earth. They are caregivers themselves, and they readily share their stories. On September 17th, it will be a year since my son's accident. My emotions, as you can tell, have been extremely high. I guess this is pretty normal and it will pass. I know this because I've seen other peer group members, participants, go through this exact difficult anniversary. And I'm so thankful to them for preparing me for this. I truly cannot say enough about this online caregiving peer group. I have made a connection with this group of people that has become my lifeline. I look forward to new people joining the lifeline. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elaine. Appreciate you sharing your story, and we're all in it with you. So any way we can help. Next, I want to introduce Dan, who I mentioned before is living with paralysis and is one of our support group leaders and actually one of our program's peer mentors as well. So Dan, I'll turn it over to you, my friend.
Thanks, Bill. And Elaine, that was a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's one of the things I was very thankful that my folks said, well, the only time I was thankful that they already passed was that they had both passed prior to my spinal cord injury. And I know how hard it would have been on them. So that was a good thing. But hello, everybody. I am happy to be with you all this afternoon. I'm Dan Swisher, and I've been asked to share a little bit about my experience as a paralytic and why I enjoy being a peer mentor. We live in Westminster, Maryland. It's in the country, about an hour west of Baltimore. And I sustained a spinal cord injury from a rope swing incident in 1998. 23 years ago, I was 42. I'm 65 now. My level of injury is T5-6 complete. And in 2014, I elected to undergo a bilateral above the knee amputation due to poor circulation in my legs and feet from the spinal cord injury. You know, my legs didn't work anyway, and it actually made my life a lot easier. It definitely has its advantages. I can always wear shorts and don't have to buy or put on shoes and socks. But prior to my injury, I had recently separated from my first wife of 21 years. I've always had full custody of our wonderful children who at the time of my accident were 17, 14, and 4. I was blessed that the beautiful nurse I had who took care of me while I was in Baltimore shock trauma just after my injury. We just celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary on July 21st. So that's pretty cool, I think. Anyway, so from shock trauma, I was transferred to Kernan Rehabilitation Center. It was called then, it's now University of Maryland Rehabilitation and Orthopedic Institute. My wife works there. Actually, she works remotely for them as a clinical documentation specialist. But soon after my discharge, Kernan had started a spinal cord injury support group. And it was a brand new group, and I've been involved with it ever since. As well, the Reeve Foundation is very involved in that program also. But I found that being with folks in my similar situation and enjoying activities and sports together, I gained so much knowledge in a short period of time, much of what I may have never learned being around others in my situation. But it's through that program that I quickly realized the importance of peer mentorship. And in that group, I had met a guy who was on the US Paralympics team, and he'd been in a chair for like 10 years at the time. That seemed like eternity for me. But it was all about independent living and helping people new to spinal cord injuries in any way he could. And he taught me so much in the way of, like Bill said earlier, tips and tricks of the GIMP trade, I call it. So thank you, Cisco Jeter. We still stay in touch, and he's moved to Florida, but great guy. Actually, my roommate from Kernan Hospital, the rehab center I went to, Tommy Klender, we remain good friends. And my wife and I are going out to visit Tommy in November. He lives in Fort Collins, Colorado now. I'm a realtor specializing in residential listings, and I enjoy traveling and woodworking. I'm good at getting pressure sores in the wheelchair. I have a lot of experience with wound vacs, I'm sorry to say. But spinal cord injury vastly changes one's life and those involved in their life as well, like Aline was sharing. You know, from catheterization, bowel programs, urinary tract infections, you know, sex, wheelchairs, traveling, and all the things we would normally take for granted make, you know, life very different from the norm. But I like to encourage others new to spinal cord injury just to focus not on the things that they're no longer able to do, but the thousands of things that they are still able to do. In short, I feel that I have a lot to offer with the experience I've had and the opportunity to share the tools, skills, and information that I've learned to improve my life with those going through similar struggles. It allows me not only to contribute to the lives of others, but also learn from them, which benefits my own well-being. I've always had a pretty positive outlook on life and encourage the SCI newbies to do their best to see the bright side on things. My motto is, things could always be a whole lot worse. So I like to encourage them to be optimistic, try to find the humor in every situation, and find their way to independent living as soon as possible. Most of my peer mentorship is with paras, and I feel like I live a perfectly normal life, even though I use a tool called a wheelchair to get around. But let's see, in the past, the Reeve Foundation has connected me with 3 other GIMPs who were considering bilateral AKAs for themselves. And I had the opportunity to speak on the phone at length with about the pros and cons with each of these 3 guys who opted to move forward with their surgery. And they now say it's the best life decision they've ever made. Let's see here. So always had a pretty positive outlook on life. I think I already said that. And I just want to say that I've received the blessings of so many great mentors over the years. I want to give back to the SCI community whenever and however I'm able. I know there's a stigma out there that about support groups. People don't want to admit they could use some help, but I do encourage others to get over that, because not only do they have a lot to share with others, they'll pick up so many things from the others involved in the group as well. So that's my basic story. I just want to say thanks for this opportunity to share. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. And thank you for your involvement in the program, and thanks for sharing your story. We have a few minutes left, and there are a couple of questions, which I will read out and try and address them the best I can. Had a gentleman write in, said, thanks, Bill, good tips. Would you recommend a specific size of the group before splitting into para-quad groups? My group often has 5 to 7 peers and a mix of pairs and quads. Is it beneficial to split into a group of 3 and 4 and 5 and 2? I'm a C6, and I've learned a lot from participating with pairs. I agree completely that concerns are often different, but can also cross apply. So it's sort of a question / comments. And so thank you for submitting that. When we talked about forming or starting the support group, we looked at somewhere between 10 and 12. We thought were sort of is an ideal size for having enough people to be able to have a more shared experience and collective voices, if you will, but also not too many people where it gets a little out of hand. But as we all know who've been involved with support groups, that number can vary from group to group, from week to week, from month to month, and stuff. So I think an ideal size is 10 to 12, but it's not always easy to get those. I'm going to kind of assume, James, based on the way you're asking your question, that you maybe are at a facility somewhere. I would probably, in terms of splitting up between pairs and quads and things, I would probably, poll your folks or talk to your people and talk to your folks who help lead the support groups and sort of get a feel for it, because it could be different in your facility, your area versus another folks, just really depending on the composition of the group, I think, and the personalities and the people. But while we made a decision to have 2 separate groups, I completely agree that there certainly is, you can benefit from learning and in some ways being inspired and motivated by folks who are at a different level as well. So I would encourage you to sort of just talk to your folks and see where they think might be the best fit and stuff. But I think great question, and thanks for sharing that as well. I did have another question here. Are there support groups specifically for someone who's newly injured, less than 3 months, both peer and family groups? I'm not aware of any groups, but I think there may be out there. We have talked about within our support group leadership, or our support group leaders like Dan and the folks here who help manage the program, about having support groups based on maybe length of time, if you will. We haven't made that decision yet. But I think there's certainly something to be said for that. So if you're involved with a group already, it might be a question that you want to speak to. If you want to, I'd be happy to talk to you more offline about it, and we can think about it as it relates to the virtual support groups as well, because there is certainly some benefit there too. And so something we've considered. So a great question. Thank you. And then lastly, at least so far, and I'll double check in a second, but just a comment that I thought I would share, and I hope this won't embarrass you too much, Helene, but it says, Helene, excuse me. Thank you for sharing your story. You've touched my heart more than anyone in almost 25 years. I truly feel every single emotion you expressed. Best of luck to you and your family. So, I think both Helene's story and your comment both speak, I think, to the power of support groups and individuals supporting each other. So, so thank you for sharing that comment. And again, I hope I didn't embarrass you too much there, Helene. I just want to check, and maybe Kaylee, if you're still on, see if there's any other questions that maybe I'm missing. Oh, no, I'm scrolling down. So hold on a second. Question, how many groups are there? What is the typical attendance? So again, we have 3 different support groups that meet twice a month. So there's the group for Paralysis, group for quads, and the group for family member caregivers. The average attendance varies. We've actually, the family caregiver one have tended to be a little bit more highly attended, but it can vary anywhere between 3 and 8, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little bit less. So one of the reasons we wanted to have this webinar is to let more people know about it, because we think that will increase participation. So thanks for your question. And then had a question about how does one become a Reeve Peer Mentor. If you want to email me, again, we'll share my contact information at the end. We can follow up with you. I think that are all the questions. We still have a few minutes. So I don't know if anyone has a last question they want to throw into the mix here. Okay. All right, so let me just close out. I'm gonna. So as I mentioned, here is my contact information. So feel free to reach out to me regarding any kind of question about the support groups and how they work. If you have any questions, technical questions or anything like that, we'll certainly get them over to Ted. I want to, again, I want to thank all of you for being a part of the webinar. Hope you found it beneficial, and we certainly hope you'll consider taking a look at. You can go to the Reeve website to take a look and learn a little bit more about support groups if you want some more information. And again, but you can also reach out to me directly via email, and I'll be happy to get back to you. I think as Dan and Helene have shared, I think most of us sort of know who've been in and around facility support groups, they really can be a huge benefit to folks, can really help individuals deal with some of the issues, some of the things you're dealing with within our community. And again, the collective voice and the collective experiences of a support group really can go a long way. Before I wrap up, looks like another question slid in here. So let me just check that. So the times vary a little bit. So I would encourage you to go to the Hey Peers. They're typically either 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. On Mondays and Wednesdays, but that calendar does change a little bit. So I would encourage you to sort of take a look, see what might work for your calendar and for your time. I do want to mention, if you do go to the Hey Peers platform, if you look on, there's 2 options. You can look at a calendar or a list. We do have support groups that are scheduled out 3 or 4 months that are on the calendar. They don't appear under the list tab, if you will, because they're because of the upcoming holiday and things like that, and the time of calendars. We don't have one coming up for another week or 2. So you may not see them there, but you'll see them on the calendar. So the time vary a little bit on the group and stuff. So that's why I would encourage you to check out. Just go to our website, and which I think is in our chat. I think just double check, make sure so everybody can see that. But I believe we had that put in. Of course, I can't scroll. Give me a second. There we go. So if you look in our chat, you'll see the website and the direct link to the virtual support group page within the Reeve Foundation website. Again, okay. So again, I want to thank Ted. Thank you very much, obviously, from all your support from Hey Peers and your time with us today. Dan and Helene, thank you so much for sharing your stories and helping let people know just how impactful support groups can be. And in closing, again, I just want to say thank you all for being here. We hope you found it beneficial. We hope you'll take a couple minutes to go to the link that's in the chat to explore it a little bit more and give it a try, because I can't imagine it won't be at least a little bit helpful for you. So, so thank you, everybody. And I hope to see you in the support group soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you.